Okay, we are live as far as I can tell. If folks can let me know if they can see and hear me okay, then that would be good. Make sure the technology is smiling favorably upon us today. We'll get started here in a few minutes. Just maybe let me know if you can see and hear me okay. Let's see. Now I just lost. Just lost the live chat. Oh, here we go. There we go. All right, good. Sounds like folks can see and hear me loud and clear. Great. Thanks again for joining us today. Hope you're having a good evening, afternoon, morning, whatever the case may be. We'll do a couple shout outs like we normally do just for fun, and then we'll get started here at the top of the hour. You can see on the screen there some of the topics and sort of a general outline of the things that we'll get to with our time today. So thanks again. Let's see who we got here. Scrolling back, some of you have been on for quite a while. Elizabeth in Scotland. I'll just sort of randomly grab folks. If I miss you, I apologize. Mama K from northern Idaho, home of the center of the universe. Sure, why not? Freddie O from Richmond, Virginia. Kay from Dorset, UK. Tanya from Finland. Hello. Zachary from New York State. Charlotte Rose from the Peak District of the UK. Janet Clancy from Devon, UK. James Fry from England. So we've got a lot of our friends across the pond representing. That's great. Terry Brown from Waverly, Tennessee. Thanks again for your kind donation, Terry. Let's see. Ron from Las Vegas. Marlies from Eifel area of Germany. Yeah, the pie in the sky is still like, I would love to like, while we're doing this at the beginning, as soon as you guys come on, like a little world map and like a little dot appears when you guys log on to the live chat and then like your name or something. That would be cool to have something like that. Liz from Minnesota. Sandra from Nova Scotia. That almost kind of rhymed. Do, 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 do. Rebecca from Oak Island, North Carolina. Sally from the island of Madeira. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Jack from Santa Rosa, California. I want to also welcome and, as always, thank our moderators today, Susan and Amanda Jo, or Mandy Jo, as she goes by on the chat. Mark from Leamington, UK. Thank you, Robbie Robin, for your kind donation. J. Scott McLean from Kingsgate, Washington. Very good. Nick from Shropshire, England. Yeah, if you have questions, Amanda Jo will aggregate those. Just follow their prompts on how we want to do those. And we'll try to get to as many as we can. Sometimes we run out of time. I'm kind of between, I got a little lull between classes here. I have an evening class. It's actually my Iceland class that I meet with today in about 3 hours. So it's an evening class here, and it's a small group of students I'm taking to Iceland in May. Alan is here from Kent, UK. Jean from Fairbanks. Jackie from Quebec. Joanne Kellum, who makes amazing hats, from Chesapeake, Virginia. Oh, and then it skipped ahead. Mildred from Norway. Lorraine from Queensland, Australia. Shelley from the BC interior. Brian from California. Kelly is from Michigan and just returned from Iceland. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed the country. Super jealous, but I'll be there in about a month. Tom from London. Tony from Leicester, UK. I probably butchered that. Cranky Auntie Linda. Love that handle. From Loveland, Colorado. I bet you're not cranky. At least not now. Cactus Wren Kiki from New Mexico. V. Shackelford from New York. Jan Scott from Ottawa. Tom from Sequim, Washington. My dad lives out on Oak Harbor. Oh, wait, it's pronounced Squim. He taught me that. Sorry. It's Squim, Washington. Darn it. I already failed at that one. Sorry, Dad, if you're listening. Mary from New York. Richard from Austria, not Australia. Got it. I've been to Austria now, so I know the difference. Lisa from Vancouver in Washington State. Felix from Munich. Patsy from Davison, Michigan. And she's having beautiful thunderstorms. Jenny is in Stockholm, Sweden. Greetings. Jackie from Quebec. Paul from Glasgow. Alpha from Hamburg, Germany. What else do we have here? We have Amanda from Syracuse. Charles from Dallas. Gary from Ridgecrest. Elizabeth from Copenhagen. Maximilian from London. Greetings. Debbie is an Icelander from Washington State. That's awesome. FSM is the dog from Cymru, Wales, I believe. Tomar from Israel. Thank you. Hope you're well. Roy from Spain. Ole from Denmark. Reinhardt from Bavaria. Moldy Bear 33 from Tennessee. Stephen is in the Faroe Islands. Mike's in London. He says I skipped him, but then I gotcha. Durden from Albuquerque. Susan from Colorado. I probably am skipping a lot of people, so I do apologize. Peter from Stockholm checking in. Odis Noro from Holland. Richard from Vienna. You have a beautiful city. Joost from the Netherlands. Pascal from Luxembourg. Europeans are coming in strong here. Let's go, North America. Waz Radio from Sydney. Vinette from Brooklyn. Brian from the San Andreas Fault. Oh boy. Tomas from Iceland. Diane from Fort Collins. Sevi from Finland. Who else we got here? You guys are just saying hello to each other. I'm just kind of filling the time here. Lisa from Phoenix. It's also fun just to see where folks are coming from. Marine Marin from Iceland. Here is, this is, wait, I don't want to skip that one. That was a good one. Shruti from India. Thank you for joining us. Salamandra from Switzerland. James from Oklahoma. Thomas from Vienna. 3D Modeler from Netherlands. Wendy from Cape Breton, Canada. Sue from Marysville, California. Tine from Belgium. Bambi from Concrete, Washington, originally from Michigan. Good clarification. Ashley from Belgium. Jack from Houston. Callie from Denmark. Monty is checking in from New Zealand. Wayne is in Mission, Kansas. Shelley is in BC, Langley. Chandel's from Montana. Gasper says cheers from Slovenia. Thank you. Janet says don't forget to like. So thank you, Janet. Yeah, clicking all that does good things. Good things happen when we like and share and subscribe, right? Tammy Lynn's in New Johnsonville, Tennessee. Kay from Hull, England. Alan from Blackwater, England. Just one more minute of this team and then we'll get started. Deborah from Belgium. Is that Belgium? Guess so. Ruth from New Jersey. Caffeine from Georgia. Geology dude, thank you. Much appreciated. Larry from California. Lauren from Pennsylvania. Radagast from New Jersey. Andy from North Texas. And a bunch of others I'm missing here. Dan from Little Rock. Ken from Caldwell. Hope you had a good time with our field trip this last weekend. Yes, Ken, it was great spending time with you. You'll probably see some pictures with yourself in them. Hope that's okay. Brian, I got that one. Let's see. Kayla from Mississippi. And on and on and on. There's no end to the number of awesome people we have on our geology team here, friends. Kimberly from Wisconsin. Great. And someone says, Dearden. Yes, you said it right. Awesome. Dearden. Okay, maybe I said it right and then said it wrong. Don't know. Okay, it is the top of the hour, so we will officially get started. Thank you for joining me. I am Geology Professor Shawn Willsey. It is 2 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. I need to change my slide there. It is no longer Mountain Standard Time, so that's a typo. Sorry. 8 p.m. over in Iceland, across the pond. It is Wednesday, April 17th, 2024, and we have a live stream broadcast. I'm always excited to do these. It's our way to engage with each other. It's a way for me to share things in a different format than just uploading a video and walking away. So this is a great way for us to interact, question and answer. It's nearly the best, I guess it's the next best thing to actually being together in person. Our outline for this live stream broadcast will be as follows. I want to do a brief little update and report on the field trips I had here just this past weekend. A few announcements of many different types, including some upcoming interviews. We will officially, only because some viewers really thought this was important, not so much because I think it's important, but we will unbox the YouTube plaque that was sent to me because our channel here reached 100,000 subscribers. So that is a testament to not just me, but to all of us for loving geology education, for the great community we've built here. So I'll hang it in my office. I'll try to hang it somewhere behind me or display it so we can all enjoy that. But recognize that that's our plaque. That's not just for me. Then we will proceed to the bulk of our live stream content today, which will be an update on what's been happening in Iceland. I have some new things for you. Maybe not so much in terms of what's happening in Iceland, but I have a few new concepts about eruptions that I'd like to share with you, things that I've learned that we'll go over. And then we will get to viewer question and answer. We may not have time for all the questions you submit. And if you can just follow the instructions on the live chat from our moderators, Susan Helmer and Mandy Joe, that would be great. And as always, thanks to them for being here. They have busy lives themselves. They could be doing any number of things, but they enjoy what we're doing here and enjoy being with you and being with me, learning some geology. But they do a lot of work. I just sit here at my computer, put some things together, and yap the whole time. They are the ones kind of like responding to many of your questions, aggregating those questions, thanking you when a donation is made, so on and so forth. So I will not be looking a lot at the live chat. They will, especially Amanda Joe, will notify me if there's anything important that I'm missing. And so that's how we're going to proceed. That's kind of the plan. So let's get started, shall we? So I want to start here with a field trip I did. So as many of you know, I've started doing field trips for our community, for our YouTube viewers. And I did a 2 different days of field trips just here around southern Idaho, taking folks to different places near Twin Falls to look at our incredible geologic history, which involves volcanic activity, large catastrophic floods, all sorts of interesting geologic features that we have in this area. This was a repeat of the October field trips I did, and I think I'll continue to offer this specific set of field trips in the future. As long as there's people willing to come and partake of that, I will continue to offer them. I will also be offering some other field trips to other destinations and other locations. And so I thought I'd just share with you a few of the pictures that some of the viewers shared with me. I was a little too busy to take any photos. So this is a shot from right underneath the Perrine Bridge, the major bridge that spans the Snake River Canyon here in southern Idaho in Twin Falls. I don't know why I'm making such a cringy face there, but I'm sure I'm excited to point out some of these volcanic rocks here. There's an interesting story here. I don't want to give away too much because you might come on my field trip, but this pile of basalt here has an interesting story to tell. It's more than just a pile of lavas. There's some other things going on there as well. So there's just a couple pictures here. This was us down the same day. This is all the first day on Thursday, April 12th. I believe we had about 15 or 16 people each day. And here we are looking at some of the large boulders. You can see the one just behind me there in the background that were deposited by the Bonneville flood. So some of these big boulders, like the one just behind me, were transported. These rocks were plucked from the canyon walls by this huge catastrophic flood as Lake Bonneville in northern Utah drained down partially. The boulders and rocks smacked into each other as they were tumbled by the force of the water, and they became progressively rounded. Off to the right here is a little bit different rock of a different type, and so we're kind of looking at why we might have different rocks deposited in this little stretch. So just a couple cool pictures here. You can see the big walls of basalt there in the background, and you can sort of get a scale there for the depth of the Snake River Canyon, about 500 feet, or what would that be, maybe 160 meters or so in terms of its total depth. This is down by Shoshone Falls. Probably not the most exciting picture. We were looking at some a rock called vitrophyre just behind me here. You can't quite see the outcrop, but you can see how captivated they are. Those people are just, they are on it. They just had a nice lunch, and now they're eager to learn. If only my college students were so attentive, right? I'm just kidding. They're very attentive. This time in southern Idaho is a nice time to visit Shoshone Falls because there's a lot of water coming over the falls. So this was a picture a viewer took looking down on the falls. This is called the Niagara of the West. You can see some of the different geology layers here on the upper left side of this photo. And so we've talked about what those layers mean and their history, and then spent a little bit of time just checking out Shoshone Falls itself. So pretty little picture there. Nice little rainbow through the mist. This was wrapping up this first day. This was on the north side of the canyon on the Jerome County side. This is called the Yinkst Grade. And I'm pointing out some of these different features here. And so this was a place where we kind of spent some time. I allow people to explore a little bit and make some observations before I just tell them what they're seeing. It just depends. Some stops I'll just do a whole dog and pony show. Others I let people converse, talk to each other, see what they're seeing, and then we kind of put it all together as a group at the end. So a couple different ways to do this. This was the first stop of the second day. This is down on the Clear Lakes grade north of the town of Buell. And this road cut here nicely exposes some different layers. So you can see this brownish layer at the bottom. There's a distinct white layer behind me grading into more of a peach layer. And then there's these very interesting brown layers that kind of come and go. And before we get to some of the volcanic rocks above. So we spent some time talking about those, looking at those. Again, we had a great group. Later in the day, we found ourselves at Malad Gorge, another narrow, deep canyon with an interesting geologic story. So just a couple photos here of just kind of how our day went. Oh, and that's it for the field trip. So that was my last field trip photo. So if you're interested in the field trips, you can email me. I do have another slate of field trips planned for late June, and those are all full. Those are going to places like Craters of the Moon, City of Rocks, and a few other places. But I will get some more trips announced here probably in about a month. I need to sort of survive the end of the semester, get through April, and probably most of May when I leave for Iceland. And then I can sit down with my calendar and schedule some more. So if you missed these trips or you think you can make it, I will plan some more trips in southern Idaho. I'm also looking to plan some a little further away, northern Utah. I think I'll just sort of slowly radiate outside of my little home base here and eventually put together several different field trips that you can participate in. So in short, moving forward, I plan on repeating all these trips each year. So if you miss it one year, you're welcome to take it some other year. So okay, so some other announcements. I have some fun interviews coming up that have actually been scheduled and will be taking place. The first one, which will happen next week, is with Greg Stock. He is Yosemite National Park's geologist. I think he's the only national park that has a dedicated park geologist on staff. That may not be completely accurate, but if not, he's one of very few. He's also authored a geology underfoot book for the Sierras and the Yosemite area. And so we're going to talk with him about his career, about what he does for the Park Service, talk a little bit about rockfall in the Yosemite Valley. He is a great guy. He's been very helpful to my students and I in the past, and I think you guys will really enjoy that. This video will just be a recorded video interview that I will upload. So we won't have the chance for interaction with that one. Just want to respect his time. If someone does a live stream, it's a little bit longer period of time. So that one's coming up. And then another interview that is pretty much scheduled. We've pinned it down to a week. We just haven't picked the date and time yet. But a lot of you will be interested in this person because you're familiar with his work on YouTube. And that's Myron Cook. So Myron and I have emailed in the past. We have not met yet personally. We went to the same university for graduate school, just at different times. We know some of the same people. We've had a very friendly conversation over email, and so I'm excited to talk to him face to face, even though it will be over the computer. But this will be a live stream, so I think he's in it for the long haul, and so you can ask him some of your questions as well. So we'll talk with Myron about his career, how he ended up in geology. I'm really interested to ask him some questions and find out a little bit more about how he puts his videos together. I think he and I do the same thing in the end, but we go about it very differently. I think our methods are quite different to some degree. I think we're both effective, just different. So I'm really interested for us to talk as both geologists and as people who are interested in geology education. So that will be sometime the last week in April, the week of April 29th. Again, I haven't pinned down a day and a time yet, but that will be happening pretty soon. Did any of you notice what just happened? So my office light went off, but you can still see me. What is happening here? Well, my wife realized that she's thought it was hilarious that the light goes off when I'm doing these. So she got me a little light that attaches to your monitor, and it illuminates your face. So even though it's dark behind me, you can still kind of see me. And I'm sure I'll fidget or move here in a second, and the light will come back on. So fun stuff. So those of you who still enjoy the comedic relief of my office light going off, it just went off. What you're missing, though, is me wildly gesticulating my arms around and trying to get the light to come back on, because I've got the light now on, so I don't have to do it. So we've got the interview for Myron coming up soon. And then Gilfie and I have been emailing back and forth. We just need to pick a date. I think he's kind of ready whenever. It's mostly me that's the hang up on some of these interviews. I'm just trying to get through the semester, balancing end of semester field trips, exams, projects, classes, and everything else with some of these things here. So it will happen for sure. I know some of you are big fans of his and enjoy his work, as I do as well. And so we will circle back. I think sometime in May, we'll get something together. He and I have not committed to a week or a day yet, but we're committed to the idea, and we just need to find a day and time that will work. So look for that soon. So a couple other announcements. Recently, I just put a video on my YouTube channel earlier this week, which was a recorded presentation I made to the Utah Geological Association. So they have seen some of the things I've been doing on YouTube, and they invited me to give a talk. They said it can be on anything you want to. I chose to speak to mostly these geologists and future geologists about how we communicate with the public. I feel like the talk was well received. I feel like it went well. You never know, right? You're kind of reading the room. It did help that there was a big group of, I'd say half the audience there was actually students, geology students that were there to receive a scholarship for field camp. And then they stuck around because there was a free lunch and also sat through my talk. So it was actually kind of fun to have a real diverse group of both professionals, a few just interested folks, and then these geology students as well in there. And so that is on my YouTube channel. But I also want to make a plug here. One of the reasons they invited me is they were very interested in figuring out ways to increase their membership. And so I put the website here. If you live in Utah or are just interested in Utah geology, it would be a good idea to go to their website. There are, I think, in every state and probably every country or region, comparable organizations. So if you're interested in geology, and if you're here with me, that means you are, and you would like to know more, you want me to come to your area and teach you geology, and that may or may not happen just because there's only one of me. But it's very likely that there is a geological organization in your area or community that hosts field trips, that has presentations, that has people knowledgeable about the geology in your area. So I would encourage you to get on the internet and search for these types of organizations if you would like to. And the Utah Geological Association is one such organization. They are, now every organization is different, but this specific one has both professional memberships, people who work in geology and have degrees in geology, but also associate memberships, which is, hey, I'm just a regular person interested in geology, and I would like to be involved in the things that you do with your organization. And so it became obvious to me that I don't think the public is aware that these organizations exist. But I got on this morning and Googled a couple different states and found geologic organizations. I even Googled a couple different countries or regions and found geological organizations there as well. So I would encourage you all to see if something like that exists. We'll keep doing what we do here on YouTube and with this great community, but there might be other ways and avenues for you to connect with folks about your area and your region and the geology that's there. So anyway, so just a little plug there about that. And in looking at some of the comments on this video I just put up earlier this week, there was one comment from a viewer that I think was actually the top comment, which meant it was liked the most. And that viewer was encouraging the rest of the viewers of my YouTube channel, so the rest of the team. This person was encouraging people to go and look through some of my older stuff and some of my older videos sort of in the back catalog. So it feels somewhat like what's the right word there? Like I'm promoting myself, but I just want to make people aware of what's here. And so if you're here because Iceland got you here, that's great. And if you just want to stick with Iceland and Iceland content, that's fine too. But what I guess I'm saying here is at this point, there's almost 400 videos here, and by no means am I asking you to go watch all of them. But if you're really interested and invested in learning geology, even though a lot of these videos might not even be on your continent, you will learn. And I think the best way to learn geology is to see rocks and see situations and see context and outcrops and scale and all those things put together. And it really doesn't matter where those are. You can learn the geology of your area by, watching videos from a totally different place, because geology is geology, rocks are rocks, processes are processes. And so what I'm encouraging you to do, if you'd like to, with some of your extra time, and I know people have limited time and you can go watch anything you want to on YouTube, but maybe start looking through some of my older videos and you might find a few hidden gems in there. There's a series on rock identification. There's one on minerals. I've mainly got these organized by location, although it's not perfect. There's one on all the national parks and monuments. I tried to include all those there. And so you might just spend some time going through these. There's some interview ones. There's the random road cuts that so many people like. But you can get in here and start looking through some of these. And I think the idea here is you will learn more. Even if you're just interested in Iceland geology, you know what you really should be watching if you're interested in Iceland geology and all the eruption stuff? Like, you should go look at the Hawaii videos. Now, some of these are really old and maybe a little cringy, but I've got some newer ones here. From Hawaii, I have some of the updates that I did in 2022 when Mauna Loa was erupting. These two locations, Hawaii and Iceland, behave very similarly in terms of their eruptive behavior. So that might be of value to you. So really someone else made the pitch on one of my other videos that, hey, go back and look at all of his other videos because there's a lot of good stuff there. And I'm just letting you know that I think there also is a lot of good stuff to be had there. So there you go. I'm mostly very proud of the stuff I've done. I think the content is good. The production quality of the videos, you could argue, isn't always awesome, especially with the older ones. But there it is nonetheless. So I think folks can go in there and learn a little bit and let me know what you think. Let me know if you enjoy those videos. Leave comments. I do read all the comments, and I do appreciate hearing what you think about any given video. And constructive criticism is always encouraged as well. If you see something where you're like, hey, if it sucks, that's fine. Just tell me why it sucks, and that's fine. So, okay. So, the light came back on. So what we'll do next here, team, is I'm going to make myself bigger, which is kind of scary. And there we go. And we are going to open the box. So a few weeks ago, I got a package from YouTube. And I knew this was coming. They actually had me fill out a little thing about what it would say and stuff. But many of you thought it would be exciting to unbox this live in front of all our community together. So we're going to do that right now. If it was just up to me, I'd still open it, maybe with my wife there or something, because it's still kind of cool. But for those that thought this would be fun and exciting, here we go. So I'm opening the box. And there is a silver plaque inside this box. Let me pull it out of the plastic here and show you all. There it is. So I guess the mirror is so when you look at it, you actually see yourself or something. So there it is, presented to Shawn Willsey for passing 100,000 subscribers. So this is our plaque, team. This is for all of us. So just real quick, once again, just thanking everyone who made this possible. I feel like I'm giving a Oscar award speech here. I want to thank the little people. No, just kidding. But really, this is about all of us, right? This is about COVID pushing me to do something new and me trying things, and it's slowly gaining traction and people sticking with it and people sharing it and all of us coming together to learn geology together. Very much precipitated and assisted to some degree by the volcanic eruptions in Iceland. So I will make sure that I put this somewhere visible on the wall for my next little broadcast or whatever. But so congratulations to me, sure, but really thank you all for making that possible, because I never in my wildest dreams, not even a year ago, much less 3 or 4 years ago, did I think that was going to happen. And that was definitely not the goal of this whole thing. The goal was just to find an outlet to share geology, to connect with people who were interested in learning with me, and we've achieved that and then some. So, okay, award ceremony over. Thank you for your kind words. Shrinking myself back down where I feel a little bit more comfortable. Killing the PowerPoint. And so let's get to Iceland. Okay, here we go. We can get rid of that too. So what is going on in Iceland? Well, largely the eruptive behavior and activity in Iceland is mostly unchanged over what we saw during my last update last week. We have one single vent that is still erupting actively at the surface, this nice little spatter cone you can see here. The spatter cone has lost some of its height and some of its symmetry, partly because we had that sort of lava spillover about a week and a half ago, and partly because there's been some collapse as well. But nonetheless, this is still a proud little volcano that is producing sporadic lava eruptions at its crater, which you can see here on the webcam, and is also producing a lava flow which is emanating out of its base and then flowing towards your view here, and that's the lava you see in the bottom right of the view here. The lava that's passing from the vent in the crater out to the flank is going through some sort of conduit or tunnel, and the gases are still escaping through this very permeable lava spatter material, and that's why you can see there's this part of the flank of the cone here which is actively degassing, and so we're getting plumes of gases coming out of this portion of the cone because the lava is directly underneath it, and those gases are rising through these very permeable rocks. There's places out on the flow, like right down here, where you can see there's a little bit of some bubbling. There's another one here in the foreground, but a couple little spots here where there's some bubbling lava. These are not secondary vents. These are just places where the lava crust on top of the lava flow is trapping some of those gases that are still in the lava, and they're finding ways and places to get to the surface, and then they're just kind of spitting out little bits of lava. So those are just little spots where we have a little bit more active degassing going on in the actual lava flow. So that's not a new fissure, that's not a new vent, that's just a place where the lava is a little more molten and hot, and the gases can escape a little bit more easily. So awesome. So that's what's going on so far. Our estimates, the estimates I've seen on the height of this cone in terms of its highest point here on the right, which would be to the, I guess, the southeast, are that it's probably somewhere around 25, maybe pushing 30 meters tall, and the diameter across this thing is more like 100 meters. So this is, this is a volcano. I've had a few questions I've seen out there in the ether about when will the spatter cone become a volcano. This was a volcano the moment lava came out of the ground. As soon as lava or ash is erupting from some place on the planet, it is a volcano. In terms of will it turn into a nice cone-shaped high point, that's just how we would classify the volcano and how it would end up looking. But this is a volcano. Right now it's a spatter cone volcano. We'll have to see if its progression changes at all. Very likely it will end as a spatter cone volcano, and then a future eruption will most likely be from some new vent based on what we've seen here in the past. So we can see that the lava flow here is channelized. It is somewhat, I can't tell quite from the view, but the view makes it look a little bit elevated. So there's a chance this could be what we call a perched lava channel or a perched lava pond. And we're going to explore that concept a little bit more today, but just realize that I am not 100% sure this is a perched channel or a perched pond. This oblique view just doesn't quite show me exactly what's going on there. Here's a view from a few hours ago, so you can see a little bit more of the details there. But nonetheless, this flow is not advancing very far. It's just moving maybe half a kilometer or so. I'm not sure what the distance is. It's not threatening any infrastructure. It's just pretty much stagnating. And that's because the effusion rate, the amount of lava output coming from this spatter cone, is fairly low. It's still producing lava. It's still erupting. It's still adding lava to the landscape, but it is not nearly as productive as it once was. So it's largely a low volume eruption at this point. So we can start with the Met Office update. And yesterday they put out a new update, and it's a really nice summary of the past month or so. I'm not going to read it to you because it is quite lengthy, but if you want a nice little summary of what's happened since March 16th at this location, just sticking to the science, this is a pretty nice summary in terms of times, what happened, how big it was, size, scale, so on and so forth. What I'd like to get to, so we got a nice picture here of the eruption when it began on March 16th. They talk a little bit about how that distal lava flow came down to the berms or barriers around Grindavik and flowed to the southeast. There was concerns it was going to cross the road and maybe make it to the ocean. It didn't quite get that far. It's a couple hundred meters from the road, and so just a picture there. And then it talks a little bit about how, as this progressed, it consolidated into 3 vents, which eventually became one vent, the vent we just looked at there. And then here's a nice little summary here about how this eruption here that began just basically a month or so ago, a little over a month, is the second longest running eruption of the 7 eruptions we've had in the area. So remember, we had 3 over here, the Fagradalsfjall eruptions in 2021, 2022, 2023. And over near Grindavik, we have had the December 18th eruption, the January 14th eruption, the February 8th eruption, and then the March 16th eruption, which is our ongoing one. So of those 7 eruptions, the one that we're seeing still occurring today is the second longest. The one in 2021 lasted for 6 months, so it's a much longer lived eruption. And then you can compare the areas and the volumes and such. And then they have a nice little map kind of a time lapse similar to what I just showed there, the December, the January, the February, and then the March eruptions. So you can get a nice little spatial overview of how big those flow fields are, how much of an area they impacted, where they erupted from, and just how they kind of overlap there. So nice little job by the Met Office. I really enjoyed that nice overview there. Then they have a couple other images, very simplified but still effective renderings of what might be happening beneath this area. So very, very cartoonish magma chamber shown here at about 4 to 5 kilometers depth. The Svartsengi power plant would be sitting above it here, and then the conduit system that was feeding the eruptions over here. And initially, they talk about it in the captions here, that we had magma flowing into the system and then flowing out to the eruption site at about the same pace. But now what we have happening over the last couple of weeks, since early April, is that the amount of magma flowing into the system is higher than the amount of magma leaving the system. And so that's why we're seeing inflation. That's why the magma chamber is occupying a greater volume in the subsurface. That causes the land above it to rise. This magma has to go somewhere, so it's filling in fractures, pore spaces, any void in the subsurface. And as that magma takes up more of the volume, that causes the land above it to rise. So we'll come back to this because the big question on many people's minds is like, well, where does this go? Like, how does this chapter end? And I don't think anyone knows for sure, but it's clearly not a long-term sustainable situation because the inflation can't go on indefinitely. Does the eruption get pinched or choked off at some point? Perhaps maybe it actually increases its flow and that eruption becomes a little bit more vigorous and greater volume of magma reaches the eruption site. And what does that mean for the magma body here and inflation? So lots of unknown questions here. So and then the last thing they do is compare it a little bit to the Krafla eruptions in northern Iceland in the 1970s. And they sort of end here. The current situation characterized by steady uplift in Svartsengi while an eruption is ongoing is uncommon. So we're in somewhat uncharted waters where we haven't seen something like this before. It's important to closely monitor the area, react promptly to any changes, and maintain safety, so on and so forth. So we're in learning mode here, team, which is exactly where we want to be, right? We want to see what this volcano can teach us. And I'd say the situation we have now is definitely a learning moment for all involved in terms of where this is going to go next. So we'll have to see how that goes moving forward. So earthquakes in Iceland over the past 24 hours. Let's grab all the earthquakes. You can obviously see the outline of the plate boundary there. The plate boundary comes onshore here, runs through this chain of volcanoes into Vatnajökull, the big ice cap, and then cuts over here. There's actually kind of a branching in the volcanic systems, and then heads out here onto the Reykjanes Peninsula. And so near Grindavik and at the active eruption site, really just no appreciable seismic activity to note. So not much going on with earthquakes. But I did have a viewer, and I knew this was there. I just had forgotten it, and I forgot where to find it. So thank you to Jan Marluski, who reminded me that the Met Office has another site of earthquakes where you can change the dates and go back further than 24 hours. So this is a map here of the last week on the Reykjanes Peninsula. So let's talk about this for a minute, and then I want to play a few games with you if that's okay. So here's Grindavik over here. Let's start over here if that's okay. The color coding on the earthquakes corresponds to how recent it is. If it's a very recent earthquake, the last day or two, it's red and orange. As we go into yellows, greens, and blues, that would be within the last 3, 4, 6, 7 days or so. So these yellow earthquakes happened about 3 or 4 days ago, presumably. And you could see there was a cluster of quakes here just to the west and northwest of Grindavik, right near the Navy's transmitter towers. This was interesting because when I did my last update on, was that Sunday? Yeah, it was on Sunday the 14th. when I started doing that update, these weren't here when I started prepping for it. And by the time I started the update and went to that map, there was obviously some clustered earthquakes there. And so I was sort of responding to those on the fly. But that activity has died down. The size of the circle is the size or the magnitude of the quakes. You can see these were all quite small quakes, very tiny. This was a 0.9, so I don't even know. There might have been a couple that were around 1 point something, but these were largely less than 1 in magnitude. And again, not related to magma. There was no evidence that this was related to magma migration. This was most likely stress release, just tectonic stresses. You know, you got this area bulging from this magma body as inflation occurs, maybe stress release from that or some other activity. The other big earthquake cluster that happened in the past week was over here underneath the south end of Lake Klevervatten. And you can see the biggest earthquake there, which was a 3.3. And again, this was on the 13th of April. And then a large series cluster of aftershocks. So you can see some of these bigger ones here were around a 2 or so, and then some of the tiny ones. Again, in the moment when these were happening, people speculating because there's a volcano erupting nearby. Is the system waking up? Is there going to be another eruption? I would hypothesize that this was just a single event, a 3.3, followed by a series of aftershocks. There's no evidence we have here that this is indicative of magma migration, of magma moving towards the surface. We have to remember that this is a plate boundary, and in a plate boundary there's a lot of stress. The plates are moving in different directions, and that stress is released and manifested as earthquake activity. And so you should expect a lot of earthquakes through here and not a lot of volcanic activity. And to maybe illustrate that, this thing only lets you go back a year or so. So let's try that, shall we? Let's go back 1 full year of time. I think I have to get it under 365 days or it gets mad at me. All right, so I just loaded 36,000 earthquakes that I'm now going to show you on this map. And the computer is crunching, and there they are. So there's Iceland, my friends. like you want to know how earthquakes are manifest in this country? There's a great snapshot. There is 1 year's worth of seismic history in the great country of Iceland, starting from these offshore quakes, continuing through this area and up through North Iceland. Realize that of these 36,000 plus earthquakes, how many eruptions coincided with all this seismic activity and noise? And the answer is exactly 5, right? So we had last July, the Litlihurta eruption. We had December 18th in near Grindavik, January 14th, February 8th, and the one that's ongoing March 16th. So my point here is to not get too excited and jump to too many conclusions when we see earthquake swarms. There you can nicely see the November 10th pattern that produced where the dike, where the magma body came over and formed a approximately 15-kilometer dike. There's all the earthquakes that were necessary to produce that. You can see some other clusters here. Some other clusters here. I mean, there's just clusters everywhere. You can't even see Lake Klevervatten for the most part, right? Because it's underneath so much earthquake activity. Not because magma is coming to the surface, not because the area has been reawakened and is imminently going to erupt, but because this is an active plate boundary. And you can follow these clusters of quakes all throughout the country into different areas. You know, here's, this is, I can't remember which volcano this is here, but you can just sort of see these clusters up through Barabunga and Grimsvötn and Askja, the volcano we've been looking at a little bit here. So I guess what I'm trying to do with this is make sure that before we get too excited when we see seismic signals and clusters of earthquakes, that we just take a collective deep breath and realize where those are occurring. And what the most likely cause is typically tectonic stress and this active plate boundary. Now, if I see clusters of earthquakes increasing in magnitude over time, decreasing in depth, meaning they're moving towards the surface and they get really powerful, then that might be something different. So maybe to illustrate that, just to do one more thing here, let's try going from, what do I want to do here? Let's try going from October 26. We're going to go this past year, because let's look at the seismic signal that is indicative of magma moving towards the surface. And this magma doesn't even erupt. So what I'm about to show you is a failed, I guess we call it an intrusion or a failed eruption. It didn't even get all the way there. So, whoops, let me just fix this here. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to go from October 26th of last year to November 10th. So loading earthquakes. Hopefully it's working. So this is a great site. So thanks for sending me this, Jan. And maybe I crashed the system. You can also search for earthquakes of a certain magnitude and also depth. So that's what those two lines there are. And maybe I just killed the computer. All right, let's try this again, because I think it's instructive. And if it doesn't work, we can move on. But let me just try one more time here. Oh, okay, it worked. There we go. So there is. Now that is what? That's 10. That's 15 days. That's 2 weeks of earthquakes. When you see a signal like that kind of density, 3,000 earthquakes in 2 weeks, clustered in a very small area, that's a bigger deal. That's definitely more instructive and possibly more revealing than some of these other types of little clusters we've talked about. So maybe that's helpful, maybe it's not, but that's last fall's, October 26th to November 10th, if I did that right. So, okay, moving on. Let's look at the GPS data, and there's some interesting characteristics and patterns here. So many of you have been with me a lot, but let me just one more time explain the GPS plots for those that might be new. So a little patience here. So we have different GPS stations scattered across this region, and the GPS station will keep track every few hours, however often we want to get the data, of its position in three-dimensional space. So here is a plot showing north-south movement. So if the movement is north or up on the graph, then the station is moving north. If it's downward, it's to the south, negative values. The middle plot shows east-west motion of the GPS station. Up would be eastward values. Down or negative would be westward values. And then the final one at the bottom here shows up and down motion, so vertical motion. If it trends upwards or positive values, then the station is moving up over time. If it goes down, that would be a downward motion vertically. So you can see, for example, this Svartsengi station right near the power plant has for the most part been moving to the north, but then you can see these steps, these punctuation marks in here, which correspond to eruptive events. So here's our February 8th eruptive event that moved the station slightly south, but then it started trending north again. Also moved the station to the west. Here's our, what would this be, the February 8th? This would be March 16th. No, this is the March 2nd, the little intrusion that didn't result in an eruption. And then here's March 16th, the eruption that's still ongoing. And then we have been looking a little bit more at these vertical plots because they're quite telling. So here is the station moving upward. We interpret that to be magma inflation. More magma is being pushed into the crust, making it buoyant. So the stations rise in elevation. Here is that February 8th eruption. So magma was erupted to the surface. So that meant the station moved downward. And then we can see this trend after that February 8th eruption, more or less going back up, and then culminating with the eruption that began on March 16th. And so things drop back down. And this is what we've been concerned with since then. So we now are seeing, this is interesting, We weren't sure exactly what was going on the first couple days. It looked like it was slightly trending upwards. Then it looked like it was somewhat flatlining or plateauing. But then in sort of, I guess, early April or so, there was a more definitive upward trend. A little bit of a change in slope possibly here, but then the last few data points show maybe a steeper trend there. Interestingly, we are nearly within a few, I guess, tens of millimeters or so. Yeah, within the elevation threshold that was reached to produce the March 16th eruption. But the pattern we've seen over time is that each subsequent eruption reaches a much higher elevation in terms of GPS elevations before it erupts. So just because we see this here doesn't mean we're at any sort of critical phase. And we also have the information and the knowledge that it's actively erupting even as we speak. And so this is where it just gets really interesting, because you have a vent, you have a conduit to the surface, there's a place for that magma to be carried upward and out of the magma storage zone underground, but we are still seeing uplift, so we are still storing some magma, and because of the uplift, we're storing more magma. More magma that's rising underneath this part of Iceland is going into the storage zone underneath the power plant than is being erupted from the surface, which is pretty interesting. So, so there is our GPS data, and I think that was, we can look at one more graph, I suppose. All the other ones in the area show very similar trends. The Blue Lagoon one, you can see a definite uptick in uplift starting in early April. You can see that as well with some of the other stations. So just, you can see that swinging upwards. This is the Edwarp station. And so where this goes, not quite sure. At least I'm not. Maybe someone else has all the answers figured out, but I'm not sure exactly where this goes. I think there's a number of scenarios that could actually play out. So let's now turn to, that's all I have, I think, for our update, but I want to do a little mini lesson here, I suppose. Grab a sip of water. On some volcanic behavior. We're going to look at lava ponding, breakouts, and something called crustal foundering. So a lot of this has been pretty observable and easy to see on some of the drone video footage that some other folks have put out, but because they tend to copyright their footage, that means I can't show it without getting in trouble with them. And so I'm going to use some comparable footage from the USGS and some other sources here that might help us with this a little bit. But as I was doing this, I realized, wait a minute, I made a video on a lava channel, what it looks like after it's cooled and solidified. So I'm not going to show this whole video. You can look at this on your own. But this is the large lava channel from 2018 in Hawaii from the eruption in the lower East Rift Zone. This is the eruption that destroyed many homes. I would argue this may be the most significant historic eruption in Hawaii in the last at least 30 years, and maybe longer. You could probably argue that a couple different ways. But what you can see here is the immensity of this lava channel. And also, as we kind of just zip through this video a little bit, you can see the sides of the lava channel, or what we call the levees, and how those are elevated. So there's some crappy videography here because I moved the camera too much, and everyone knows that. But here's a little better shot of the, I wanted to show this first before we look at some active flows. So if you could allow the landscape in Iceland to allow the eruption to end, allow that lava to cool and crystallize, the lava channel that's coming out of that vent is nowhere near as big as this, so you'd have it scaled down a little bit. But it would look something like this. This is a river or a channel of lava. In this case, it's flowing towards your view and out to the sea. And then, I'm sure I'm telling some good things there. You can see some people there, some of my students for scale. And then I think in here, I think I marked the time point I wanted to show you. Oh, here we go. So another question I'd had from people, and I just sort of spitballed an answer, but then as I watched this video, I realized I kind of had an answer. some folks had asked about how long after those lava flows cool and crystallize in Iceland, how long might it take until we get some sort of vegetative regrowth, until the mosses grow, which is really common in Iceland, those initial pioneering species. And I just sort of speculated based on just total gut, a gut check, that in Iceland, you're probably looking at multiple years and probably decades until you see some of those pioneering species revegetating and growing on those cooled solidified flows. And then as I looked at my video here from Hawaii, I realized, oh my gosh, this was 5 years old. I was here in 2023. This eruption was in 2018. And even after 5 years, now Hawaii is a very different climate and setting than Iceland, but just to illustrate how quickly you can get vegetation back in these areas, along some of these fractures here in the lava, you can see these ferns starting to grow in these fractures, places where it collects a little bit more water. It's protected from the heat of the black rock above. And so these ferns then will continue to grow. Root systems will get bigger. The crack will probably get wider. The rock will start to break down into better soil. And so, yeah, so I just wanted to address that because a lot of people had questions about how long it takes for these lava flows and fields that we've been watching to regenerate vegetative growth. So, yeah, and I think Iceland might take longer because it's a colder climate. And so that's why I probably said like decades. Hawaii, things are much more quick to come back because it's so wet and warm there. But you can see these levees, these mounds, raised mounds along the edge of the lava channel. You can see some overflow areas here where the lava has spilled out over the channel and flowed down away. And this is essentially what we're looking at when we look at the webcams today in Iceland. Sorry for the terrible filming here. But if you get a chance, you might watch this because this is exactly what that landscape, once that eruption stops and cools and you can walk around on it, it will look very similar to this. There's a little close-up of the lava rock, very frothy. You can see all the vesicles and gas bubbles in it. The rocks you can pick up are very lightweight. Anyway, so there's some fun stuff for me. You guys can watch that on your own. I don't think there's a whole lot extra to spend time with there. And then I had some fun looking for some USGS videos from Hawaii. So this is, well, I'll just read it to you. This is a time lapse of several hours of activity at the lava lake, which is similar to a lava pond. Now, I don't know for sure if we have a perched lava pond in Iceland, but when I look at the webcam videos, I think we might. And so this just shows you some of this behavior where this lava pond here in this video is going to collapse. The levee is going to collapse, and because the pond is elevated, it's higher, it's going to drain back down into some other location. So these are nice little short clips. If you get on the USGS YouTube page, you can find these as well. This is time lapse, so it's sped up. And so the place to kind of focus on here, let me make this a little bit bigger, is right here. Here's the perched lava pond here. So here's this main lava lake, but there's a elevated perched lava pond over here that's going to have its levee collapse and it's going to spill down into this lava lake. So here's the collapse right there, and then that lava pond spills down and fills up the lava lake, and so it starts to overflow into some of these areas here. So maybe just one more time since it's so quick. There's the breach, and then it starts pouring out. And this is one of the hazards I think they're wrestling with in Iceland. So why are people not allowed to just go over there and just hike up to this thing? Well, you could have this elevated lava channel or pond potentially, have a breach at one of the levees, and then it spills out. And they've actually done studies at how quickly that lava can move at the breakout point is many times faster than the lava rate at the vent that it's erupting through. So anyway, so I thought this was kind of helpful. Maybe you did as well. And then I have, this is a lava lake at Halemaumau. So this is the summit of Kilauea. And what you'll see here is the way that these lava ponds or lava lakes in the vent area typically, but sometimes it can be out on the flows as well. I'll show you an Iceland lava flow here in a second where you can see this. But this is how it resurfaces itself. And this is this concept and process called crustal foundering. Basically, the slabs of crust that have cooled are more dense than the hot molten lava below them. So because they're more dense, but they're on top, that's not a stable situation. So those dense slabs of crust will sink down into the lava lake or lava pond or lava flow, and then that will be replaced by an upwelling of fresh lava. So let's watch that real quick here. Thank you, USGS. So watch this lava lake here, and you will see some sections. There's some sections right here starting to collapse. I think if I remember right, this one spreads a little bit too. There's a section starting to collapse there. So that whole slab sinks down. Okay, now there's another one there. So now we have this fresh lava surface, a little bit of shaky wind action on the camera. Sorry there. Here come some other sections. These are going to fall. This is crustal foundering. These partially solidified pieces of crust have become too dense and too rigid, and so they sink down. This is how these lava lakes and vents basically recirculate and sort of recycle their material over time. And we see these in above vents, but we also see these out on lava flows as well. So maybe one more time. That was pretty cool. So first one starts here in the lower left. Lava's kind of squeezing out of this fracture, piling up on that dense slab, and basically kind of forces it down. And then it's sort of a runaway effect. So you've just unzipped the whole system and destabilized it. And the wind is apparently angry as well. So here's some of this lava pouring out here along these fractures, and then this thing just sort of sinks. So different than, like, you know, sometimes we think of these crusts in the lava like icebergs in the ocean, but that's the wrong analogy, because icebergs are less dense and they will continue to float. These thickened lava crustal slabs are more dense than the buoyant, more gas-driven, hot lava beneath them, so they will tend to sink. And foundering just means they're sort of sinking over time. Here's one more. This video shows crustal foundering and resurface at the lava lake in Halima'uma'u. Recently, this foundering process has been common in the eastern portion of the lake. It's shown at 20 times speed. So I think this is a different one. It would be kind of boring if I showed you the same thing. Here we go. So it's sped up 20 times, but you can see it just pieces starting to break away from this lava crust. This is all now fresh. You can see a different color over here. This more fresh lava to the right. And so that's how these vent areas, this would be at the summit crater lake of Halima'uma'u, just sort of gets recycled over time. So you can see it just kind of breaking through. And again, it's sped up 20 times to make it a little more exciting and, you know, a nice little 1-minute YouTube clip. This would in real time take, 20 minutes to see this process play out over time. Okay, so there's that one. And then I go into my next clip with a little bit of trepidation because it's not USGS, and I hope I don't get burned for showing it because it's a different YouTube channel. But it's not one of the drone pilots, so hopefully this is okay. But this is this is at Fagradalsfjall in 2021. The vent is off here to the left. You'll see it in a second. And this is part of the active flow. And you'll see the crustal material behaving the same way, where it starts to just, slabs are sinking. So this is this is also a lava pond here. It's just that it's crusted over. It's still molten below. There's the vent back over there. And so I think we might have some of this process happening out on the flattened lava flow area that's out there just south of the vent, that spatter cone. So this is called crustal foundering. So fun little buzzword for the day. So you can see these things kind of sinking down as they go. That'd be cool to see. I would like to witness that up close and personal. That'd be neat. So, so hopefully that was okay that I shared that. And then finally, I found a paper. I think it's actually a thesis. Actually, I have two papers. So this is a thesis from William Spicer, class of 2017. Perch Pond Kinematics of the 1783 Laki Lava Flow at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. So good job with your degree there, sir. And the diagram, now I have to find it, that I wanted to show you here, because I don't think I did a good job. So this is the lava channel, right? So the lava channel is flowing in and out of the screen away from you through this little pathway here. And as the lava is flowing there, it's moving faster down the middle, but on the margins of the channel, on the sides, it's moving slower, so that lava starts to stick and accumulate and accrete over time. And so that's what builds the levees, the little berms on the sides of the lava. Now the lava flow discharge, the amount of lava moving through the channel can like rise or fall, and if it rises, it can overspill. That adds more lava. And so over time, what can happen is you add more material on the sides of the channel as you can build these lava channels up so that they're elevated, so they're perched, so they're higher than their surrounding topography. And what they show here with these 4 diagrams is a couple different ways to do it. One is on flat topography. So you're just building up this perched lava channel above the existing topography by successive flows, and that's what these little dotted lines are here. And then B, C, and D are just 3 versions of having non-flat topography, basically having like a little valley or maybe kind of a wide valley here, but still ending up with the same thing, still ending up with potentially having a perched lava flow due to the way the lava is pouring down the middle, but then building up the levees over time. So, and then the last thing I think I had, what was the other paper I had? Oh, here we go. So this is from a guy I went to grad school with. He worked for a long time at Hawaii Volcanoes National Park with the USGS, with the Hawaii Volcano Observatory. He's now with the Alaska Volcano Observatory, and I'm hoping he might come on and do an interview with us. His name's Tim Orr. This is a paper he published that just shows you some of these perched lava channel flows. So you can see the lava channel flowing through here, and you can see it's elevated from the surrounding topography. You can also see a few places where it's overflowed and spilled over, forming these kind of more shiny areas of lava overflow here. This is places where there's kind of slabs that have ridden up onto the flow there. So the flow direction's this way, and you can see some of the slabby nature of that here. And then this is a nice one here showing, you get these lava flows. There's a little bridged over section here. And so the whole point here is to show you how these perched lava channels can form, because I think, but I don't know for sure, but I wonder if the channel we see here is perched above the surrounding topography, because it does look like it from all the webcam views I've seen. And it's been active long enough that it would make sense to me that as it pours out of here onto mostly flat ground, it would start to behave this way. So we'll have to see. Once we get maybe some more data or overflight or something like that, that might lend a little bit of perspective on exactly what's going on there. So I think I got through everything I wanted to share with you there. That took us through an hour, so that's good. So now we have a little bit of time for some questions, if there are any. Let me check my email and grab, well, I'm ready for questions now if Amanda Jo wants to send those. And then we can take what we will here. I'm checking the live chat now, seeing if anyone, hopefully that was helpful. I was kind of in the zone there. And so I haven't been able to check the live chat over the last few minutes. So we'll wait for Amanda Jo to send me a list of questions, and I'll do my best to address those. And then we can move on. So let's see, is it in here? Nope. Yep, so I should hear a little noise here once I get things in my ear. Okay, here's a couple questions I can just see on the live chat I can answer while someone's asking. What dates am I in Iceland? I will be in Iceland from May 14th to the 30th. I spend a week with students, got a couple days on my own, and then I have a group of YouTube viewers that's coming out, and I will do another field trip with them. And I'm hoping I can, who knows what's going to be happening in this area at that time. I'm trying to see if I can get access to get a little closer to the eruption site. But we'll have to see. I've got a few contacts there in Iceland. We'll have to see if that will work. So, okay. Thank you, Amanda Joe, for the questions. Here is the first set of questions. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, and we can pull these into, I can pull these over here, make them a little bigger, and we can just take a stab at this together here, folks. From Ann Umphrey, what is the difference in formation and such between a spatter cone and a cinder cone? Great question. Very similar. They both are erupting the same composition of lava, basaltic lava. So if you were to grind up the stuff coming out of a cinder cone, grind up the stuff coming out of a spatter cone, chemically, they're nearly identical. The difference is in the gas content and the eruptive behavior. So if your volcano and your vent is erupting with a little bit more of a gas content, and so it's more of a frothy kind of lava eruption, the lava particles are smaller, and more gas rich, more gas bubbles within those particles. That's going to accumulate around the vent and build you a nice cinder cone. Cinder cones can be up to, I think the biggest ones are maybe like 300 meters tall, about 1,000 feet. But that would be a cinder cone, a nice symmetrical cone built out of those cinders. It's more of a frothy eruption of lava versus a spatter cone, which is what we have going on now, where instead of throwing out small frothy pieces of lava, it's throwing out clots of lava. So they're more dense. They don't fly out as far. They barely sometimes clear the rim of the volcano, the cone. And spatter cones tend to be shorter. Spatter cones, if you get, I think about 100 meters, that would be a really tall spatter cone, and cinder cones can be 3 times as tall. Because the particles are smaller, lighter, and so they can be shot out further up into the air around the vent. So hopefully that helps a little bit, Anne. Similar shapes, I would say. The spatter cone might be a little bit steeper because when those clots of lava fall around the vent, they can weld together, and so they can be at very steep angles. A cinder cone will just have the angle of repose of those cinders, which is maybe like 35 degrees. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But good question. Carolyn Page, on the interferometry land rise map, I see a large area of red south of Klevervatten, greater than the rise in the same period at Svartsengi, but have not seen any discussion of this. I haven't seen that, so I need to know for what period that shows. Remember too, I'm not saying that it's not, her question, is it possible that a sill is forming south of Klevervatten and that Krishuvik is waking up? Potentially. I'm not going to say that's not happening, but we would need to see clear evidence of inflation. We would maybe see the earthquakes, of course, as well, indicative of that. Maybe some other changes in the magmatic system. There are some geothermal systems in that area, so maybe you'd see some changes there, although the geothermal systems tend to be a lot shallower and closer to the surface. I haven't seen that, so you'd have to send me a link to where exactly you have seen a recent interferometry ground deformation map that shows 3 centimeters of uplift near Lake Klevervatten. I would be very interested to see that. Realize too, though, that we're talking about faults and earthquakes, and there's lots of faults that can produce up and down motion. So just because we have uplift doesn't mean it is for sure magma intrusion. You might get a clear pattern of uplift that's more linear, that is more consistent with earthquakes along a fault system, versus a magma body. And so we have to entertain both those possibilities if we were to look at it. Janet Clancy, with the ongoing eruption and the land rise, what happens if it continues erupting, but land rise reaches previously high level? Will eruption just get bigger, or does it have to stop first? I have no idea. I don't know that anyone knows for sure what's going to happen. What we don't know is the conduits that magma is passing through to get to this active spatter cone. We know it's connected to the deeper source, and for a while it was bypassing the storage system, but now it's storing some of the magma. So now that magma that's coming up, not all of it is getting through to the vent. Is that because the vent or the conduit is very small in diameter and you can only send a certain volume of magma up to the surface? Is it because there's other pathways for the magma to go? So some of it goes up to the surface, some of it goes into the storage system. Are there multiple pathways? These are all just really good questions that we don't have answers to right now. Yeah, I don't know if the eruption would get bigger once it reaches that level, or you could see a surge in activity, or potentially it could stop first. I think either scenario is possible. So sorry I don't have a good solid response there. From Martin Volcano, given the fairly constant increase uplift on the GPS since Svartsengi, do you think it's most likely the current eruption will reinvigorate or culminate in a new fissure eruption dike intrusion? Yeah, so somewhat related to the last question. Again, the plumbing system is the big black hole that we just don't know enough about. And so predicting where the magma is going to go, how it's going to behave when we don't know the pathways and the options that it can take is really tricky. But to answer your question, do I think it's more likely current eruption will reinvigorate? I think you have a conduit that's open. It would be easier and more efficient to use that existing conduit and, as you say, reinvigorate it rather than create a new fissure, a new vent or new intrusion somewhere. So if I had to guess, I would go with that one. But there's really no way to know at this point, I don't think. From Daxi 82, where does the continuous outgassing in the bridge of the cone come from? I mean, the small vertical part at the south side above the outlet, is the structure there different from the rest of the cone? Yeah, so this person is asking about this area here. So I guess I wish I could draw this. So you have your crater, right? So this area here where the lava lake is sort of fountaining goes down. That continues down to the vent. You know, let's say it goes straight down, but it could go down at an angle. Let's assume it's vertical. From the base of that pit somewhere, in that lava lake in the crater, further down, there is a conduit that carries the lava out into this channel. So there is think of it as a tube, a pipe, if you will, that carries it out this way. As the lava goes through the tube and starts to come out the base of the cone, the gases from the lava are escaping and rising through the flank of the volcano, where these rubbly rocks and what we call agglutinate, the spatter, the lava, sticky lava particles that came out, there's enough pore spaces and voids for that gas to escape there. So that's how that's been interpreted based on everything we've seen there. So hopefully that helps. Rock Tapper Robin, is magma melt/mush hotter than the crustal rock it rises through? Can it incorporate surrounding material? If so, does it have to melt first? Yeah, fun question there. It is hotter because it's rock and then magma. So the fundamental difference between rock and magma is rock is solidified and the magma is at least partially molten. So it's at least partially in a liquid phase. It also has gases and it also has some solid phase with the crystals and whatever parts kind of solidified, especially if it's like a mush. So it is hotter. As it passes through that material, it can melt some of it, but it needs to be pretty hot. And it depends on what it's passing through. Now in Iceland, you have basaltic magma passing through basalt. And so you'd have to reach that that temperature of melting basalt, which is maybe, I don't know, like 1200, 1300 degrees Celsius, something like that. So it doesn't have to melt it. It's going to come up through a fracture. And if there's enough pressure behind that magma, it will force itself through the fracture. It can widen the fracture. Those will generate some sort of seismic signal, earthquakes. So it doesn't have to melt it, but it could, depending on where we're at, how cool the surrounding rock is, how long it's in contact with that rock, and the actual temperature and volume of the magma. So those are some variables there. From Grandma J, silly question, but when the lava rises above the ground, what fills the void in the earth? When the lava, so not all the lava gets erupted, so a lot of that magma stays in the subsurface and it stays in that part of that void, and that magma may stay underground for forever, and it could cool and crystallize into a solid rock, what we would call an intrusive igneous rock. It's rock that formed inside the earth. So that's a possibility. You could have voids left, so you might have a situation where, like Crater Lake in Oregon, which was once a big mountain, Mount Mazama, had a huge eruption of material. In fact, there was so much gas in that magma that it created ash. It was a very explosive eruption, and there was nothing that filled in the void, and the mountain collapsed in on itself. And so without the structural support there, it can collapse in on itself and form a caldera or some other type of collapse feature. From Michael Harmon, the Grindavik volcano still has a lot of continuing activity, yet I'm guessing it won't last, but I wonder, can these events be an awakening of new volcanic activity? Well, we're definitely in a new phase. I think everything since 2021 with the eruption at Fagradalsfjall, it tells us that we have new volcanic activity happening on the Reykjanes Peninsula. Yeah, will it last? I don't know. Like if you'd asked me 2 weeks ago, I probably would have said, oh, it looks like it's winding down, but here it is still chugging along. And so I'm not ready to put, a death sentence on this little chugging spatter cone, because it could continue for some time. We know there's still magma being fed into the system from below. So this could go on. This could go on for months. This could maybe go on for longer. We might be looking at this, I mean, maybe not likely, but a year from now potentially. I think all those possibilities are still viable at this point. From Kathy Whalen, is the bubbling and spewing lava in the lava field due to the increased depth of the said lava field? No, not necessarily. I think what's happening out there is out in this lava field here. So here's some of that little kind of bubbling behavior here, is you have this solidified crust, right? So the crust is cool, it's in contact with the air. We've seen that it sometimes can sink down, crustal foundering, right? But in the meantime, the molten lava beneath it is still hot and still contains gases. So those gases are still trying to get upwards and trying to escape. So will the bubbling and spewing lava field is it due to the increased depth of the said lava field? Not necessarily. I mean, I think there probably is some ratios and some critical, like you probably need to have a certain depth of the lava field. If the lava flow field was only, 20 centimeters deep, you probably don't get that type of behavior versus something that's, meters deep, which is probably what we're looking at there. So, from Surters, when will the Mid-Atlantic Rift close again? The Mid-Atlantic Rift will never close. The Atlantic Ocean will close again. It opened about 220 million years ago as Africa and South America moved away from the east coast of the US. That pulled all my British friends away from me because they were attached to North America at that time. And at some point in the future, the widening of the Atlantic Ocean, the continental and ocean crusts that are sitting next to each other off the coast of both continents will disengage or break apart, and that ocean crust will start sinking, just like the crustal foundering we saw there in the little lava flows. And when that begins, that'll initiate a subduction zone, and that will close the Atlantic Ocean, probably many millions of years from now. But that will be the case. So I guess if that's the answer to your question, when that takes place, the mid-Atlantic rift will probably still be operating, but subduction zones move quicker, so they can close the gap a lot quicker than that. And maybe I can show that real quick with, do you want to see how that would work? Because I don't feel like my hands waving around in an animation is the best way to show that. So let me show you a quick video clip after we watch this ad that will show this. So let me get to where we are today. So here we are now, right? We have North America and let's say Europe. We have the mid-Atlantic ridge in between. Just envision an island on top of it, and that would be Iceland. The brown layers over here are continental crust. Continental crust is very buoyant. It doesn't sink. It's lightweight. And then here in black, we have the ocean crust, the basalt, the much denser crust. It's thinner, but it's more dense. So notice here that the ocean basin opens for some period of time. But then what's going to happen, I think it'll happen over here, is the attachment of this ocean crust and continental crust. This ocean crust just gets older and older and older at this end. It gets colder, it gets more dense, and at some point it completely detaches from the continental crust. So here we go, we're opening the Atlantic Ocean, and at some point in our future, that ocean crust starts to detach. It starts to slide underneath the continent. In this case, I guess that would be North America. So now we see, because subduction is always a faster process than divergence, where plates are spreading apart, notice the whole ocean basin is coming together and closing. So what would we see if we were at this point? We would have mountains and volcanoes on the east coast of the US. It would be in earthquakes. It would be very different than it is today. And then eventually, if we let this play out, so there's the volcanoes erupting, subduction zone. We're even going to subduct the mid-Atlantic ridge. Bye-bye. So there it goes. And eventually we close this ocean basin, subduct all this ocean crust, and now Europe, or Africa, I guess, collides with North America on the east coast. Those two plates of continental crust, the subduction ends, the volcanism is pretty much over, and we thrust up big, lofty, Himalayan-sized mountains. And then the cycle can start back over again. So that's the idea there with the Wilson cycle. So maybe that was kind of fun. And then there's a question here about Ruang. So I don't have the time or bandwidth to monitor all the volcanoes everywhere. And I try to stay informed about what's happening, but day job, classes, lots of grading, lots of emails to respond to. I'm not making excuses, but keeping track of the hundreds of volcanoes on planet Earth is more than a full-time job. So I didn't hear about this much. I don't know much about it. So did I hear about the Indonesian huge eruption that has produced a huge amount of SO2 and ash with the VEI4? And I also saw many lightning coming too rapidly in stones. So why? Well, this volcano sits in a subduction zone. So if we go over to that part of Indonesia, here's a trench. So there's an active subduction zone here. If we go to some of these other islands, you will see big, lofty, dangerous stratovolcanoes. So here's one on the next island to the north. There's one there. That looks like a very active volcano. I don't even know what name that has. Looks like there's the eroded remnants of another volcano. And then if we come a little bit further south, oh, did I lose it? Oh, now I need to find out where exactly it is. Oh, there it is. And then, sorry. Then so we leave that island chain and come down here. And this is the volcano that's in the news today. So it's a big, I mean, Indonesia has literally, I think, over 100 volcanoes. Luckily, not a lot of people living over here, except way over here on the western end. You can see on the Google Earth image that it has sent pyroclastic flows down to the ocean in the not so distant past. You can see that lobe there. So this is the volcano that's producing a big, what we call Plinian ash column that goes 20, 30 kilometers into the atmosphere. There's pyroclastic flows coming down, possibly all sides. I would definitely have people, whoops, might have been a glip there. I would definitely have people evacuated from this community, getting them away from this coastline, moving up and over the ridge because of the pyroclastic flow danger. The pyroclastic flow hitting the ocean could trigger a tsunami potentially, which would cause waves to inundate the shoreline. Yeah, I would get people within a 10, maybe even a 15-kilometer radius away from this thing. But hopefully I answered your question okay. Why is it there? Because it's on a subduction zone. Why is it a nasty volcano? Because subduction zones involve a different magma composition that makes them much more explosive. That's why it's sending ash so high into the atmosphere. By pushing ash and convecting material that far into the atmosphere, it's common to get lightning within the ash column itself. You have different charged particles, so it's kind of like a big thunderstorm cloud. And if it has the ability to pump out ash, it can also throw out small stones and pebbles if it has enough propulsive force coming out of the vent. And so that might be why locally around the volcano there's small stones, which are larger pieces of ash. We call those lapilli, that are falling out of the sky as well. So sounds like a bad eruption. Luckily, it's in a largely uninhabited area, at least the island, but there are some people nearby. So that's something to consider. So okay, so one more question sheet here. I'll see how many of these I can get through, and then we'll wrap it up. Hopefully my questions have been helpful to you, and I appreciate everyone for hanging in here. Maybe a quick little reset here. Just want to make sure folks are treating our mods well, Mandy Jo and Susan Helmer. Thanks for all you're doing there, and hopefully good learning is happening there with the live chat as well. If you can donate to the cause, that's always appreciated. I share that with the mods and try to help them out as well. Anything you can do to support our geology education is always helpful. Yeah, so let me answer this last page of questions. Question sheet number 2. Let's see. Gotta make this bigger. Robin M. Shawn, which volcano will you be leaving your 1000 YouTube button on top of? How does that work? I don't know what that means. Oh, like I get a button and I'll travel to a volcano and leave it there? Is it kind of asking me like what my favorite volcano is? Ooh, tricky. And I don't monitor I don't monitor all the volcanoes. I think the volcanoes I've visited, done presentations on, learned a lot about, I have a much more vested interest in. So Mount St. Helens, most of the Cascade volcanoes, Yellowstone, the volcanoes in southern Idaho, Iceland, Hawaii, those are volcanoes that I'll keep track of. Today's the first day I even heard of this volcano we just saw in Indonesia. So doesn't mean I'm not interested in what happens there. It's just, I just only have so much space in my brain for volcanic information. Oh, thank you, Dr. Michael, for your donation. Much appreciated. Yeah, so Robin, probably not a great answer, but a fun question. I probably would have to think about that. Mark Coleman, if there's an open vent to the outside, why is the ground uplifting? Wouldn't that act as a pressure release? And wouldn't that uplift increase the pressure, and could the lava flow rate rise? Yeah, so the idea is that we have a vent to the outside, but the ground uplift is still occurring because we have more magma coming into the system than is being erupted to the surface. That maybe that magma is taking a detour into some lava, into some storage zone. Could be the amount of gases dissolved in the magma, that some of that magma is buoyant enough that it can rise all the way to the surface, whereas other magmas rising into that storage zone stagnating because it's reached neutral buoyancy, and it's going to need a continual supply of magma and gases in order for it to continue its journey up to the surface. So we are releasing some of the pressure conceivably, but it'll be just interesting to see how much, because I mean the volcano that's erupting now is just, it's just a low effusion rate. Like if this drops a little bit more, I think this is done. So I think it's basically, without knowing the numbers here, I think this spatter cone is maintaining close to the minimal amount of what we call an effusion rate, a lava volume output, if you will, to actually stay molten and continue to erupt. If it drops a little bit more, you probably start getting that crater area starting to cool and solidify, and then everything kind of gets plugged up, and then you're back to no eruption potentially. So that's my take on that. Hopefully that's helpful. Joanne Kellum, some folks in other groups are saying that the lava building up around the cone in Iceland is going to turn this into a shield volcano. Is this possible? Can an eruption change into a different type? Sure, volcanoes can start as one type, like oftentimes fissure eruptions. We saw that with this eruption here. This started as a long fissure eruption that concentrated into several cones, and those became spatter cones, right? So we started with a crack in the ground with lava pouring out of it, a fissure eruption that progressed into several discrete spatter cones, and now we have one primary spatter cone. In terms of a shield volcano, the eruption needs to change character a little bit. This is not going to give us a shield volcano. We do not have A, enough lava, and B, the lava is too gassy and not quite hot enough, I would say. We need to have that lava kind of spilling out. We basically need more of it. And then you might see this progressing into a shield volcano. So you need probably a greater output, longer lived eruption in terms of time. And I mean, the gas content's actually fine. The gas content's probably not the trigger there. Those might be some of the variables that would allow this to flow out. Doesn't have to flow out in all directions at once, but sort of pour out over the rim of the cone, spill out in all directions, forming low viscosity fluid lava flows that will form that kind of dome profile of a shield volcano. So that would be my guess as to what we might see here. Usually this is what you typically see late in the stages of a fissure eruption is more of a spatter cone type of, spatter cones are the main thing you'll see in late stage fissure eruptions. At least that's my experience. So Wayne DeFries, thanks so much for your kind donation to myself and the moderators. Appreciate you helping the cause. Okay, next question, team. Christine Olkers. If this vent is still erupting and uplift in the area continues to the breaking point again, what would a secondary eruption look like with lava already flowing? Quick drink. I don't know. I mean, even at Kilauea, there's only been a few times in recent history where we've had multiple vents open at the summit and on the East Rift Zone. That's happened a few times. So what would a secondary eruption look like? So if we kept this vent going, inflated our magma body, first of all, we don't know where it would go. I would guess that it would probably go, I mean, it seems to me that there's probably still some pathways over here, right, that are easy for the magma body, which sits over here somewhere, to make its way to the surface. So we have conduits and plumbing systems to get to this area. We've seen that with 4 different eruptions. And so I guess if you're going to keep this March 2024 vent chugging away and you want to have a secondary vent open, my best guess, and it is just a guess, is that you're going to see something along this trend open up. This trend being anywhere from the town of Grindavik all the way up out here somewhere along where you can see these thick lines where I drew the vents for these fissure eruptions. That'd be my best guess. If it went totally different way, I guess I wouldn't be surprised. Susan M, how wide can a spatter cone like this one get? Every time I see it, it looks wider relative to the spatter and gases. Yeah, that would be an interesting little kind of study. If the webcam's always the same view and they don't zoom in or out, if you could go back in time enough and just, on your screen, make some measurements across it and see if it's actively changing in terms of width. In terms of how wide can it get, like, I don't even know how wide this one is. I'm totally guessing that it's maybe 100 meters wide, if that's about 30 there. Yeah, it's about 3. It looks to me like it's about 3 times as wide as it is tall. Maybe you would agree or disagree. So I don't think it would get much wider, because to get wider, you're going to have to the lava is going to have to go further away from the vent, and it's chugging along here, but it's oftentimes not throwing this lava spatter much beyond the base of the cone out here. And so it's likely to not get much wider, but we've seen the height and the shape of the cone change over time with collapse and the overspill and some of the other things that have happened there. So yeah, good question. Andrea Schwartz, when the gas leaves the lava, is there gas in the stones or it is completely gone? No, when the gas leaves the lava, it tends to go into the atmosphere. So there is the gas leaving the lava, but some gas, you're right, does get trapped in the cooling and solidifying lava, but it does escape out of the rock, right? So it's not like you break open a fresh piece of rock and there's a bubble of sulfuric gases kind of awaiting you. So it does basically get out of the cone. Did I answer that one good enough? When the gas leaves the lava, is there gas in the stones? No, the gas isn't really in the stones. It's escaped by that point. So once you get to full solidification of the lava, the gases have been, they've gone out of the system. There's fractures, lots of holes, lots of pore spaces. From Mina, Finland, is Iceland's core made of gabbro? So gabbro is a rock. If you take this same basaltic lava that we see erupting here at the surface, and you allow this to cool inside the earth, so it's not at the surface, but it's cooling underground, what you will get is lava that cools slower, so it's going to make larger crystals, and it'll form a rock called gabbro. And so to answer your question, Mina, in terms of Iceland's core, I know that a few places where they've drilled down into deep cores or deep wells, boreholes, they have run into in places layers of gabbro. I also remember, if I'm remembering right, I believe there's also a few places exposed in Iceland where there is some gabbro. So I would say most of Iceland's deeper crustal rocks are probably made out of gabbro. The magma, the basaltic magma that never erupted to the surface and stayed underground and solidified. From Sokai Cat, could you make a presentation of Thorbjorn? Its history looks interesting. So that's the hill right here. I don't know a ton about it other than it is a tuya, which means it's a subglacial volcano. So this erupted, I don't know when, but it erupted when the ice was covering it. So that would probably be at least 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. So it is what we call a tuya. It's made out of not so much lava flows, but fragmented pieces of lava. It might have some pillow lava along the base. and then the bulk of it's probably made out of this fragmented brecciated rock called hyaloclastite. And then interestingly, it has these fracture systems, faults, if you will, that run through it in this northwest southeast trend. Remember, we had here near Grindavik, amongst all this chaos that's ensued over the past several months, we had the development of these two grabens, right? These fractures, these fault systems that were downdropped slightly in the center. And you can see one kind of went through, and this is just my version of it. I don't know if that green line is perfectly located, but possibly went through this area here and maybe even reactivated that structure. But you can see there's a crude graben that had developed here on Thorpjorn at some point, where there's a fault system on the west, a fault system on the east, and you can see these are just normal faults, higher on one side, lower on the other for the most part. There's also some other fractures and faults that run through it. So I don't know if I'll do a presentation on it just because I don't know a whole lot about it, but it's a neat looking hill. I mean, of all the little prominent hills around Grindavik, it is one of the ones that kind of catches your eye. The other one being, I don't even remember the name of this one, but there's a nice shield volcano here, and then these little depressions coming out of it. I think these are collapsed lava tubes. You can also see a few more craters out here, maybe pit craters, possibly related to that tube system as well if it connects through here. So not quite sure, haven't looked into it in too much detail, but yeah, definitely an interesting looking mountain there. Foxfur, I enjoy all your volcano library. Thank you. Hubby appreciates them too, because if I'm watching videos, I'm not shopping. There you go. Better living and better finances through geology education, right? If you're watching geology videos with me, you're not on Amazon buying up things that maybe you don't need. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Doug Vincent, have you ever visited Mammoth Cave in Kentucky? Worth the trip, huge cave system. Yeah, I would love to. Have I even been to Kentucky? No, I've been to Tennessee. So have not been to Kentucky, have not been to Mammoth Cave. Definitely another place to go visit. Grandma J, what is keeping the lava from eroding the cone base and flooding out? So going back to, well, let's actually look at something we can see. It's just cooling too quickly, and it's possible that the lava that's feeding this lava channel is coming through a little bit deeper, like tube system. So even though it's hot, it's not hot enough to thermally melt the spatter and agglutinate above it and cause it to collapse or anything. So that would be my take there. Did I answer that question? What's keeping the lava from eroding the cone base and flooding out? Well, it is escaping, so it's not like it's not like it's not getting out. This lava is continually convecting, and the reason it doesn't kind of overspill is because we have some of that lava escaping from the base here. So it is sort of keeping it in check. Otherwise, we'd have the lava level in here potentially rising, and that would start building the cone a little bit higher. So it is coming out the bottom there. Hopefully I answered that okay. And then our last question, I think, here is from Ann Umphrey. Later, when all cools and hardens, can you see the slabs within the flow? Oh, regarding that video. Well, when you have the crustal foundering and it's sinking like that, you probably don't, because everything's getting remelted or mostly remelted. But you can sometimes see if the process gets arrested somehow, which usually doesn't happen, but you can see slabs of crust that maybe get pushed over or tilted. But when we see that complete, like, kind of convective cycle of those dense crusts sinking down, the new magma lava welling up, I don't think those get preserved well. So best answer is I don't know for sure, and my best hunch there is they probably, once it all cools and hardens, I don't know if you'd actually see those or if they'd get completely remelted. So really interesting question there. So okay, so we did two pages of questions, which is pretty good for me. And so I think If there's nothing else, let me just check a couple things here. Nothing from Amanda Joe. That's good. Usually she'll tell me if I screwed something up or forgot something. So good news there. So we'll maybe start wrapping this up. Let's see what we have in the live chat here. Make donations, gift memberships, people making lots of comments, get a free membership, and so on. Yeah, I don't know how all that works. I know YouTube has like channels with memberships, and I've been kind of just leery about, I know there's all sorts of, am I maximizing my financial gains from this YouTube channel? And the answer to that is no. One thing I do that you guys may not recognize, but I think it's important because I don't like these, is you've all seen YouTube videos or live streams where partway through an ad comes up. And I hate that. I hate watching a video with good content and I'm engrossed and I'm engaged and then an ad comes up. So I have disabled that on all my videos. There are, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, and I can reset that, but on all my videos there is no what they call mid-roll ads that pop up halfway through a Shawn Willsey video. So would I make more money by enabling those? Yes. How much more? I have no idea. But I've disabled those completely. I know there is Patreon accounts where people buy memberships into it. I guess I'm hesitant to go down that road right now. I might change my mind in the future because the way I understand the Patreon memberships is people buy like a tier of membership and then the creator, me, gives them certain perks and things and content and insider things. Maybe people sponsor videos. Right now, I kind of like where I'm at, where I do what I like to do and what feels right to me. And hopefully it resonates and you enjoy it as well. But I'm not obligated to do something. Because if someone was sponsoring me or whatever, a Patreon level or whatever, and said, hey, I want more videos on this volcano in Japan, I would have to do that, right? That's a service that's been paid for, it's been requested, and I would have to reciprocate by providing that. And right now, I kind of like doing my own thing, making the videos that I like, that I'm passionate about. I think you're getting the best version of me when I do that, rather than getting obligation Shawn Willsey, which maybe is a little less psyched to be doing it. Yeah, so that's kind of why I've kind of avoided that. I don't know much about Patreon. I am not mastering the YouTube game. Someone could watch me from afar and shake their head and say, man, that guy's missing the boat on so much revenue he could be generating. Right now, it feels right what I'm doing. It is helpful. It is generating some revenue, and I appreciate that. And that's a credit to all of you who watch it and who donate to the channel. So right now, I just feel like that's kind of where I want to be. Like the ads are there just at the beginning. You watch your 5 seconds, then you skip it. If you want to donate to the channel, I have a few avenues set up for you to do that. And I think this is the spot I want to be in for a while. I do have someone working on like logos, and maybe we'll get some merchandise going and stuff, because I think that's just fun. I'm not looking for that as a way to make money per se, but just as a fun way to spread the geology education, build the community. It's fun for you guys and me, and so that's kind of my idea moving forward. So all that being said, hopefully that landed in a good place with you. So yeah, YouTube's a weird world, and I'm in it, and I am a YouTuber. I'm admitting to that, but I'm a reluctant YouTuber. I'm not doing this for a full-time job. I teach college classes. This is a fun side gig. It is rewarding to me personally. It is somewhat rewarding to me financially, which is nice. Allows me to take my wife on a nice vacation or something, but I'm not looking for this to be like my main revenue stream. It's too erratic, right? Like, what if the Iceland stuff just ends and goes away for 5 years? Then I'm back to what I was doing before, which is fine, but doesn't maybe isn't as lucrative or doesn't get the views that some of these other things do. So, yeah, good stuff here, team. What do we think? We're pushing on 2 hours here, and I feel like we did some good work. So I have a class in about an hour, so I think ending here would be good for me, and might be good for the mods to have a little break too. So thank you all for joining me. Let's see, moving forward, what can we expect? I will try to get this hung up, so we'll get the fancy silver plaque. I am kind of, if I put it behind me and it has a mirror, will you guys be able to like look at the back of my head? I don't know how that's going to work, but I'll find a place to put it. I feel like it needs to be visible to you good folks. Maybe we'll just for now just put it in front of the peanut butter pretzels. How does that look? There you go, right on the microwave, a place of honor. So there it is, it's hanging up. Moving forward, what can you expect from me? Today's Wednesday the 17th. I have an all-day field trip tomorrow with my 101 class. I have a video coming out probably Friday that is a visit through Central Park, so some of the geology of Central Park in New York City. So hopefully you're excited about that. And then next week on Tuesday, I have my interview with Greg Stock, the Yosemite National Park geologist. Believe it or not, I'm kind of almost out of fresh field videos, but that's a good thing because that means I get to go outside and make some new ones. I will probably also continue to, on occasion, handpick a few of my older videos that I feel like maybe have been sitting on the shelf for a long time or didn't get as much notice as they should have, because I think they're particularly engaging and good. And I will relaunch a few of those older ones, add the little Google Earth fly-through thing, add some text to it, do a tiny bit of editing to make those maybe a little bit more appealing to folks. So look for those as well. And yeah, and we'll just see going forward. I'm sure we will do another live stream and or Iceland update next week. Not sure. It'll kind of depend on what's going on. Right now, I feel like with this level of activity, we can probably do an update every 3 to 4 days and kind of stay on top of things. But as we've all seen in the past, this thing can ramp up and surprise us in short order. So we definitely want to keep an eye on the GPS data that's coming in. Undoubtedly, there will be a cluster of earthquakes somewhere in the area that folks get excited about, and so we might want to look at those to some degree as well. So we'll just be checking in and out. I should be around for the next 3 to 4 weeks, and then once I leave for Iceland the second half of May, I will make sure there's some videos ready to go. I hope to also be able to put some new videos together while I'm in Iceland, and then actually upload those while I'm in Iceland. So that's the plan moving forward. But I do appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for your viewership. It means the world to me. I love the fact that you enjoy what I'm doing and you appreciate what I'm putting out there. It's not perfect. It's not sexy and glossy and shiny, but it is from the heart. It's what I know. And just learning with you is incredibly rewarding. So thanks for your donations. A couple folks coming in here: Richard Shoesmith, Ann Umphrey, Gabriel, Ariana, Tony Jarrett. Thank you all for donating to the live stream. Appreciate that. So on behalf of Susan and Mandy Joe, our moderators who did a great job, give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and sign off. Thanks so much for all you do to support the channel. Be sure to like, subscribe, do all those good things. Lots of places you can go to YouTube to get content. I appreciate you coming here. I appreciate you spending time with me. And we'll just learn together moving forward. So go through the back catalog, learn a couple new things about some new place you haven't really explored or even heard of. And we'll just see how things are moving forward. Thanks again. Oh yeah, and we'll do some road cut videos too. I've got some good ideas for some new random road cuts. I forgot about doing some of those. We'll get some of those together too. Thank you, Sandy SR, for your donation. Much appreciated. Yeah, just good just some nice feel goods coming in now. I'm kind of hesitant to end the live chat because we're all kind of like on a nice little high there. So Linda Bartlemay, thank you. She loves my channel from Portland. Thank you so much for donating. I love this. This is great. I think at this point, I kind of feel like I have to do a live stream at least every 1 or 2 weeks just to kind of to feel your energy and for us to connect together. So I'm really looking forward to continuing to do these along with some of my other videos. So until next time, signing off here from Twin Falls, Idaho. Hope to see some of you maybe on a future field trip. I'll get some of those announcements out soon. Thanks again and take care. Goodbye.